afternoon, I guess good evening and good morning, wherever you're signing in from. Welcome to our GLF Live. My name is Natasha Elkington, and I will be your host and moderator for today's discussion, where we'll be talking about the future of sustainable fashion. And I guess before I introduce our wonderful guests that are joining us on this panel, just a few housekeeping things. The GLF Live will also be available on as a podcast later on Spotify, Apple Podcasts, Stitcher, and countless other platforms. And then in the coming months, we hope to bring you exclusive content in the months ahead. Our audience who have signed in, thank you for joining us. And if you have any questions, just share them on the chats or the comments, and we'll do our best to share them with our lovely speakers. Once again, my name is Natasha Elkington. I'm signing in from Nairobi, Kenya. And I'll introduce our guests. And since we're on the same time zone, I'll introduce Isaac first. Isaac Waithaka is based in Kenya and is a social entrepreneur on a mission to implement the next generation of impact-driven initiatives. He is the co-founder of Label Fashion, that's L-A-B-L Fashion, which is a social enterprise that makes sustainable fashion, boosting small and medium fashion brands to success. And in London, we have Bianca Pitt, who's joining us today. And she's an advisor to the environmental charity sector, an activist, a campaigner, an environmental funder and founder. She's also the founder of the Women of the Environmental Network and co-founder of She Changes Climate. Thank you both for joining us. And I guess I'll just let you, thank you, give a bit of a summary of what, your role in the sustainable fashion industry. And maybe we'll start with you, Bianca. And then Isaac can jump in and give us a bit of background of what he does. Thank you.
Yeah, thanks so much for inviting me and Isaac today to speak. My first foray into fashion, really under inverted commas, was when I joined Nina Morenzi, who started the Sustainable Angle, which is a charity that educates the fashion industry on making more sustainable choices. She was also the founder of the Future Fabrics Expo, which is, now in its, I think, almost 10th year of reiteration, and has grown since its inception to become a huge fair where the alternative materials are now shown to fashion buyers and designers. What it means really, we're going to explore in our conversation today. The fashion industry is a hugely complex industry. There's a huge, often not transparent supply chain that unfortunately comes with it. And of course, transforming this supply chain needs many actors, many agents, and requires many advisors also to come on board and showcase the alternatives. This is what we are doing with the Future Fabrics Expo.
Excellent. Thank you. Isaac?
Yeah, thank you, Natasha and Jim, for having us. I am Isaac Waithaka, based in Kenya. So I'm a co-founder of a company called Label Fashion. Label Fashion is a socio-sustainable fashion manufacturer. And what we are doing, we are partnering with everyone in the value chain, right from the community. Community is growing cotton. We convert this cotton into garments that you wear. And in future, you are able to trace who produced this cotton.
It was very interesting to hear about Isaac's work yesterday, because looking at the fashion chain, we need to start at where do materials even come from? Most of the materials traditionally were grown on farms. A lot of people know that food comes from farms, but they don't know that fashion comes from farms as well. So cotton is grown on farms. Hemp, for example, which is used to make linen, was grown on farms, and we really derived our materials generally from the soil that farmers worked. And unfortunately, we also have chemically produced materials made from fossil fuels. So polyester and nylon and acrylics are actually made by originally the petrochemical industry and are oil-based. This is something I think a lot of people aren't aware of when they buy fashion garments. And particularly fast fashion garments are made from these chemically produced materials and not naturally produced materials. What Isaac is doing is looking at the materials that are produced on the farms, and what he is doing with his initiative is to have a fully transparent supply chain, which is incredibly important so that we can trace back where materials actually come from, and also shine a light on the people who are working these farms, toiling the soil. This is something that we need to absolutely pay a lot of attention to, particularly if there's not strong environmental legislation, which unfortunately is still the case in many countries where a lot of these materials are produced. The production processes, then once you get the ground material, there's a process of further manufacturing the fabric. So fabrics are dyed, for example, or treated in all sorts of ways, and then finally they are put together in workshops into clothes. And what we've got to look at is the supply chain for that is sort of goes from the field or from the petrochemical industry all the way into the stores and then to the consumer. And I really loved the slogan that was brought up by some demonstrators recently in London, who said, "People change, not climate change," which really shows what we can do to bring about change. We can start with the people. There are a lot of people working in the entire supply chain from beginning to end. And we can work with the people who are in the supply chain and people who can influence the supply chain to make the necessary change.
Great. We even had a comment from our viewers, one asking, what has land management got to do with fashion? So I guess you've made the connection.
A lot. It's a very good question, and a surprising amount. So a huge amount of land use goes not just to agriculture in the sense of feeding people, but also producing cotton. When we look at cotton, which is something that Isaac is working on, organic cotton, thank goodness. The cotton industry is an industry that uses a vast amount of chemicals. If you look at how any produce is grown on fields, most people don't know that to get crop, if it's not organic, not only is nitrate used to make crop grow, but then as it grows, insects come, so insecticides are used, herbicides are used, so weeds don't grow. Hormones are sometimes even used to make plants grow faster. There is a gigantic amount of glyphosate used, for example, worldwide to repress weeds, and glyphosate was a nerve agent originally produced in the Second World War to kill people. We now spray it on the fields to repress weeds. And therefore, the cotton industry, unfortunately, has a huge imprint, negative imprint on our soil health and the biodiversity in the health. Because if we spray the soil with these chemicals, of course, we change all the life that is in the soil. And what we have come to learn is that we completely depend as a planet, as people, on the health of the soil. So the microbiome that is in the soil, the many creatures that live there, and their health as well. And then from that, of course, all the insects and the birds that are supposed to live on this land as well. So agriculture and land use is absolutely vital today, and it's something, it's a topic that really concerns us all, and that we all have to look into. What is land used for?
Yes, so it is a question. I think. Wait, sorry. For some reason, this connection with mine is not. It keeps coming in and out, but I think it's a good platform maybe to get Isaac to jump in on there. Like you said, when we discussed the different layers, in the fashion industry, and there's many, like from beginning with the soil. I think Isaac can jump in and just give us more about, the whole African situation in terms of cotton and the industry and what the realities are on the ground.
Yeah, thank you, Bianca, for that backup. Actually, in addition to that, in terms of land management, as Label, we are doing what we call regenerative farming, because the current practice involves clearing, mass, tracts of land. And especially in Africa, most of the time what they do is burning. So if they do the burning, they clear everything. And in terms of healthy soil, one, it requires microorganisms. If you burn, if you let the sun rays penetrate into the soils, then these microorganisms are killed. If you clear the forest, then it rains. This is what we usually have, this, flood menace, flash floods. So whenever there are all these factors, then in terms of production, we are talking of no future, because you have destroyed the future, which is the land. Without the land, without healthy soils, then the future is, of course, destroyed. And also we are talking of over extraction of raw materials. Most of the time, what happens once you clear, then the fast fashion, everyone wants fast fashion every now and then you forget about tomorrow. You need this fashion, so you impact and negatively on soils, on land. Yeah, I believe that I might have helped in terms of answering that.
Yes, great. So I think, like when we were discussing yesterday in our pre-chat, in terms of the layers that are in the fashion industry, that, we have half an hour to chat, not even, where it's difficult to kind of cover all the elements that are in the fashion industry, starting with soil, for example, then the production and manufacturing, like we said, even with the workers who work in the industry, the chemical industry that contributes to that, the environment that gets affected. We have the finance and investors that are also involved, the legal industry, laws that need to be in place to protect workers and the environment, and then also how clothes are sold, the industry itself, and then the value chain and this whole circular economy. So in terms of fashion, there's a lot of layers that need to be discussed in order to figure out how we can make it sustainable in the future. Within that, I think what's interesting maybe is to explain like how different it is from the global south to the global north. Like we here in Kenya, like 900 million garments are sent from, I think, from the West every year for us to use as secondhand clothes, called mitumba. But only, I think, 20 to 50% of that is unusable, so it goes into our landfills. And then the rest is how we function with fashion down here, where we can't have fast fashion. And whereas, in the global north, it's fast fashion that's driving this industry. So maybe just to share, like what your reality is on that side, Bianca, and then Isaac, to share yours on this side, and what do you see as the solutions to balance this out?
No, I mean, I think we all agree that fast fashion is completely unsustainable. It's a model that doesn't work, for many reasons. The environmental footprint is a catastrophe. The social impact on the many workers who are not paid proper salaries is a catastrophe. And economically, if we don't have a circular economy and we produce things, at actually a very high cost, the problem is that the externalities are not costed into the price of the garment. So a t-shirt should not ever cost, a low price, because simply a lot of work, energy, water consumption, we haven't even touched on, goes into producing fashion garments. And fashion in itself, in the past, we used to make clothes and we wore them until they fell apart. We repaired them again. And I am very much a supporter of the refuse, reuse and recycle sort of motto we all have to keep in mind. First, let's refuse, let's wear what we have already, let's not buy if given a choice, let's reuse what we have, and then only, even as a third step, recycle, and then only comes buying something new. We should avoid buying new things at all costs, at all times. The global north has a huge legacy of resource extraction. This is something that we have to come clean on. We have to first of all face up to I'd say historic mistakes and historic debt that we also owe to the global south. This is a conversation I have a lot of the times at the moment, which is good, because we need to talk it all through and we need to rearrange I'd say our relationships. We've become very transactional. Europe in particular has a history of extracting resources from elsewhere, and this is not good for our relationship, and it's not good for our planet, our systems. Our environment, social and economic systems are closely interconnected, as the pandemic has shown so dramatically. And we have to really now, look at how we can culturally define what is enough. We don't need more, We just need to have enough. Yeah? And what is enough? We're well beyond enough here in the global north and in the west. And it's time to really look at how we can live together on a planet with limited resources, right?
Right. And then you come to the global south. So Isaac, it's a completely different reality to, to our fashion industry
absolutely.
here. You want to jump in?
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, absolutely. One of the things that makes it challenging is the disparity between the global north and the global south. So you find the problems of global north are not the problems of global south. Although the global north is the one which creates most of these challenges that are being experienced in the global south. One of the challenges that we are seeing is, for example, like in Kenya, in this scenario, in late 1990s, it used to be the lead in terms of textile manufacturing. And then we had globalization in terms of liberalization, where, one could dump everything, and then what happened is the death, the collapse of, the textile industry in Kenya. So what is usually dumped here? We have second, hand clothes, and you find most of these clothes, which are usually given as, charity in global north. When they come here, they're usually sold actually at a premium cost. But you find a huge chunk, they usually cannot be used. So they usually come here to be dumped. The other thing is corporations, those corporations that are supplying, the global north, they're usually located here, in the global south. We usually see exploitation of the workforce, the labor, the kind of, domination they get, it's usually sometimes dehumanizing. And also in terms of the policy, as Bianca had stated, the legislation, it's either whatever legislation is there is weak, or there is none at all. Or even if there is a very good registration, but because the government and the communities won't work, then they'll just overlook. The other thing, it's a lack of, the technical know-how and the knowledge. You find people just do it for the sake. Those who are supposed to be giving information, non-existent. And how to be able to fix this from the global south realistic way of doing things. One, it's collaborating with farmers, collaborate with all, in not only farmers, those, at, the production stage, raw materials and so forth, to avoid, over extracting, to avoid destruction of soil and so forth. And that's what on our side we are calling it regenerative production. And also the other thing is community-based production. This community-based production will help in terms of setting up small facilities where if you have a client from whether it's the global south or global north, you can have what we call batch productions. You make orders, and these orders will be produced according to the need, not just for the purposes of producing and making money. So that's another, I think, solution which might be able to fix this. And also transparency, creating that circularity. You have to show how was it produced, who have been involved, are there any malpractices that have taken place. So it's a whole topic to discuss, and it can be done. And for us, whether we are the one who are on the ground implementing, whether it's Bianca who is on the other hand, helping, pushing for the formulation of policy, it can be done. We are doing, what we need is just a concerted effort. Then everyone joins on board, and then this would be fixed once and for all, even if it's not completely.
Yes, I totally agree. And I think even like when we were discussing yesterday about even just mindsets, like, the youth are also the big, consumers of fashion. And it's also changing, like, like I think Bianca was saying yesterday that, we had long time ago, there was more like, it was about quality rather than quantity. And I think this mindset has to change. And I think also the fashion industry needs to jump on that too. Like we're saying, like 900 billion, 100 billion garments are produced every year in the fashion industry, which is a lot. And then all of it ends up in landfills.
Nobody needs, I mean, we've got 8 billion people on the planet. And I mean, that tells you how there's some people out there ferociously hoarding, or at least buying, and then sadly dismissing again their belongings. But I think just to come back on what the Global South can do, what I would really like to see happen is simply much stricter environmental laws be both developed in all the Global South. I think that is absolutely vital to start with. And then, of course, these environmental laws have to be also enforced. So in Europe, for example, we have very good environmental legislation now, I would say, on the whole, and it's getting better all the time, thanks to charities like Client Earth, for example, who do a lot of policy work and advocacy work. It's a not-for-profit law firm that I also advise. They are, for example, they have been working with the EU on the deforestation law. So what we are ensuring here is that no goods enter the European Union that have come from a place where deforestation has just taken place. So what we want to avoid is any further deforestation. As you know, we absolutely have to look after our forests. They are sacrosanct. We must not touch them. We need them for our survival. In fact, we need more forests, so that would take us all the way to regenerative practices, regenerative agriculture, regenerative everything, which is a way to restore the planet whilst also still producing things. It is absolutely possible. And then if you have strict environmental laws, you know, then you have a tool with which you can go after corporations, for example. Right. So if a corporation like Cargill, for example, they have been, it's the world's largest soy producer, and they have been buying soy from deforested areas. Well, we have just launched, as a Client Earth has launched a formal complaint against them with the OECD to say that they have not used the appropriate care to make sure that their supply chain is sustainable and is indeed following all the regulations that are in place now worldwide. And with these tools, we can actually do something. But if there are no laws, then it's a free for all. And in Africa, for example, Africa is a huge continent. It's difficult to apply a sort of general view on Africa because Africa is actually many, many different countries. But in Africa, the forest laws are actually a mix of community laws. So Isaac was talking about the local communities, which are absolutely vital. If we don't have people in the local community looking after forest, there won't be any forest, unfortunately, because someone will come and take away what is currently in the forest. So we need the local communities, we need local forest rights to be protected and respected. And the governments have to do that. So we need to have basically build a coalition between the governments all the way to the local people to define a proper set of laws to protect the forest and to enforce that set of laws. If we have that in place, and if everyone is winning out of this situation, you know, everyone needs to feel that they're getting something out of this. This is unfortunately how we as humans operate, but it can work. We've seen that in countries like Ghana, for example, which Client Earth worked with to protect the forests there. They worked with the government, they worked with the local communities. They looked at all the existing laws, you know, ancient laws, some of them, and looked at how a compromise can be found between the different parties to protect the land. And this is what was achieved. So it is absolutely possible. And we've just got to really push for this development to happen.
Great. Isaac, do you want to add anything to Bianca's comments?
Yeah, absolutely. In terms of community engagement, that is usually very, very vital, especially in Global South. If the community is not educated, then even if you have those laws, you know, everyone will be like, okay, we don't know, something like that. And especially in terms of penetration, you know, of information. For example, in Kenya, it can be a little bit different, especially if you go to the north, where there is no network coverage. You know, people get, you know, usually, like, for example, like, yeah, there was this instance where the former president visited a village in the northern parts of Kenya. And then they are saying, oh, we had your father just died, you know, and the person died in 1978. And then in 2017, is when they're getting this information, real information that their father died, So in terms of information penetration, then also it requires in terms of, resources, and also who are these who are, will be doing that, implementing the registration. In Africa, it's a little bit difficult. You'll go maybe, for example, like 20 kilometers, and then you find someone burning, a forest there, or they had Mutumba, and then they are just burning in the open. So it's a whole set of getting to understand the root cause, empower these communities, how they are empowered. Now that becomes the challenge, to be able to involve them. Yeah, and also in terms of the global north, the consumers have to be educated to ensure that they really make a follow-up to ensure whatever product they're consuming is in conformity to the laws that are in the global north. So by this, what I mean is they can be able to trace whatever. It doesn't even have to be fashion. That really can help so that these corporations are able to educate the community.
I think it's very important, like what you both, just to jump in, just like to summarize, this education of our local communities. I think that's very important, because when you're hungry, if you're not empowered and you're hungry, you're going to let anyone just come and whatever, shillings they give you for taking your trees, you'll take it, so like we said, like there's so many levels, and then the root cause of it, there's many roots. The root is farther down. So we have other social issues, cultural, political, economic, that we have to also fix within our countries in order to be part of this game, and do it sustainably, because we're being exploited because ourselves are not protecting our own people.
Exactly. So everyone's a participant in this game, and what we've got to do is stop playing this game. Basically, we have to stop accepting this game. This game is not acceptable on many levels. It's not acceptable, and this is where we can. This is where we have to disrupt, essentially, and this is where we have to bring change. What we don't want is the global south to model the West or the North, right? That would be a disaster. And instead, the global North also has to look at the global South and see what is done really well in the global South. If I look at the communities and indigenous people, they are the best in preserving biodiversity. They have found a way to sustainably exist with the nature around them. We have lost that connection to nature completely in the global North, but it's also rapidly happening in the global South, unfortunately, as, for example, the African continent is urbanizing, right? We know more and more people are moving into cities. We've got these mega cities developing now, and moving into a city can automatically lead to a disconnection from the land. So the question is, if we only have a few people remaining in the countryside, how can we guarantee that their work is respected, that they are respected, that they are protected environmentally, and that these sustainable practices are continued, and not unsustainable practices are imported from elsewhere, right? The Global South has a lot of reason to be very, very proud of its heritage, culturally, in terms of looking after nature and so on. And we need to make a thing about that. This is something that has to be held up, I would say, against the global North, and against any extractive practice that unfortunately has been brought to the global South by the West. That really has to stop.
Indeed.
Absolutely.
Yes, and I have some questions from the audience. I'm going to just throw them out there, and then whoever wants to answer, please go for it, because our time is slowly coming to an end. So we have a comment from LinkedIn which says sustainable fashion can also minimize waste by using upcycled materials like repurposed clothing and fabric scraps. Designers can create using materials and reduce their production's environmental impact, which I think is, yes, I think we all agree with that one. And then we have someone asking if you have any idea on using bamboo fibers for packing materials. And then there's one more question about, can you please share your views on the role of traditional textiles and biodiversity in sustainable fashion? That's a really good question.
The view on I'm glad someone's mentioning packaging materials because that's a huge concern. We know that a lot of deforestation takes place because of a sort of renewed trend to use pulp and paper for packaging. That is a
right, from
huge
plastic to paper.
issue.
It's not helping.
Exactly, it is a huge issue indeed, and we have seen virgin forest be cut down to create packaging. All your little Amazon parcels that come through the door, you know, are part of this problem. We've got to look at other ways to produce packaging materials. Again, refuse, reuse, recycle. You know, we should all be reusing packaging that comes into the house. I'm very encouraged to see that, for example, on the secondhand platform, fashion platform that my daughter uses called Vinted. People just wrap things in plastic bags, put some sellotape over it and send it in the post. And I think that's fantastic, because what does it mean? Old packaging is being reused as well and not new packaging created. Old materials, the hemp is and linen, for example, is an incredible material. I can't sing its praises enough. If you look up its properties, it's sustainable, it's cooling on the skin, it's all sorts of things. So, and it can produce fairly easily and regrown very easily. Wool, for example, in England was once the material that was used widely to clothe us and our children, and that is a fantastic material as well because it lasts forever. It keeps us warm. It's got all sorts of properties on top of that. So and what I have found, certainly as a consumer or user, I don't even want to call myself a consumer here because I reuse everything, is that they last forever. They just go on and on and on. There's so much mileage in it that my mother has kept the jumpers that I used to wear as a child, and my children still wear them, you know, and amongst friends, we're sharing old clothing that we used to wear as children. This is what we do, you know, and we're proud of it. Proud, because what does it show? It shows that our parents already bought good quality clothing that can hand it on from generation to the next generation, and that's a sign of quality. It's a sign of good stewardship and good investment and strategy, in my view. If we constantly have to go out buying cheap things and then chucking them away, that's very, very poor management, very poor resource management, poor use of money, and so on. Right. So
I think. Yeah, sorry, I was going to jump in and just say, like, I think, you know, like even the film industry and all the influences that we have out there could also, you know, play a part in this, where it's like shameful to wear the same outfit twice if you're going to appear, you know, in social media or in social circles. You know, there's this ethos that's going around where I think also they need to change, which will help influence others.
Yeah, see, I see it completely. I think this sort of throwaway culture is totally uncool. It's a matter of viewpoint, as always. Everything has two sides. I just think it's deeply uncool. It shows lack of imagination. You know, you just, if you can't.
And wastage.
Exactly, and wastage. Who wants to waste? I just don't think that's attractive in any way. No. You know. So
yes. I don't know, Isaac, maybe you can talk about the role of traditional textiles, because I know now with label, with your new fashion label, like I think that's the way that you're going to go. So maybe talk to us a bit more of the role of traditional textiles and biodiversity in what you're doing, is one of the questions from the audience.
Yeah, one of the things about traditional textiles, especially in Africa, you know, it used to be largely hides and skins. So it was just more of, you know, you have your sheep or goat and so forth. But of course, we have some instances where they used to have, for example, like Bianca has spoken of hemp. It has been used traditionally, especially to make ropes. And also we have some trees, you know, the bark of trees have been used to make textiles. One thing still that remains, it's the conservation, especially when we have to talk of even bamboo, because it has been used traditionally. With mass production, going back to the traditional way, you find that again we are creating homogeneous way of production. What you are saying is we clear hundreds of acres and then we plant hemp, or we plant the trees that, bring about these, textiles, or even bamboo. Then that's monoculture. Is monoculture sustainable? So therefore, it's all the same in whether it's, the current fashion or traditional one. You need to have something that creates an atmosphere for environmental conservation. Of course, we are not talking of preservation. We are just talking of you have to conserve. You have to use what you have sparingly, and therefore, traditional farming, traditional production of textiles, yes, but regeneratively. It must be able to regenerate. It shouldn't be mass production. Yeah, thank you.
I totally agree with you, Isaac. I think it's vital. Biodiversity stems from diversity, not monoculture. So if we want to have flourishing forests again and flourishing meadows, we've got to make sure that we plant with the environment in mind. And by the way, I think the same is true for people as well. If I go to, a gathering and everyone is just dressed in gray suits, it makes me feel almost uncomfortable now. I just realized that we have lost all the diversity here in, again, this very much sort of office culture in the global north. And on the other hand, if you travel to Asia or to Africa, you see the most fantastic fashion there, the most incredible clothes, fabrics that have been made by many generations, that last, that don't have to be thrown away, that can be repaired as well, and that are cherished by each generation that holds these garments, right? And this is what we want to get back to, is we want to only own things that we love and are proud of, and that we can look after, and not spread ourselves too thin. And that is happening in the global south, by the way, and the global north. We've got the whole vintage culture, and that's big. It's a big deal. These Depop, these fashion platforms now like Depop and Vinted are huge conglomerates now, and young people really embrace them, which is fantastic. And hopefully we can educate everyone else around the world to do the same, simply to swap, to change, to keep, not to throw away. Natasha, are you able to come back?
Yeah, maybe also in addition, for example, like what we are doing as label in terms of reuse. If we produce, for example, a t-shirt, we want to embed a QR code, and then we are building a blockchain platform for traceability. So therefore, if you use this t-shirt and you want to throw it away, or you cannot, you can no longer use it, then you can ship it back to us, and then we can repurpose. Then it can be reused as something else. So therefore, in regard to the question on reuse, there is a lot of ways we can be able to check on this trend.
Yeah, there was a question about recycled fiber. Recycled fiber is good, but not, can be a problem as well. The more you recycle a chemically produced fiber like polyester, say, the shorter the individual threads of the material become, and the less reusable it becomes, and the more damaging the production processes as well, unfortunately. So if you want my personal advice, I was always, as a matter of principle, stay away from any fossil fuel based fiber. Another problem of that is that when it is washed in a washing machine, then the fine nanoparticles of that fiber will break off the fabric, and unfortunately will go into the wastewater, and that then washes all the way into the sea, and the poor fish that swim around our islands and in the oceans have to drink this plastic fiber mixed with the seawater, and this is then what we eat when we land a fish again. So it just simply doesn't work as well as advertised. I do welcome the efforts of bigger retailers to use recycled fiber. I think that is good as a start, but we really want to start from scratch and think about, thinking about the circular economy. I recommend everyone reads the Cradle to Cradle book, which explains in detail what that means. Is that when we produce something, we have to think about the entire use of that product all the way to its end. And ideally, we don't want to have any waste at the end, but we want something to be reused. Great book, great TED talk for those who want to watch something on TED for that.
Yeah, actually, in regard to that, that's why, for example, like us at Label, we're only focusing on cotton. So we also trying to, okay, it's a big debate. We are trying to not focus on anything synthetic. And also the kind of paint we are using water-based, organic water-based ink for printing purposes. Therefore, because that becomes really a whole issue, as you have defined, especially in terms of destroying the soil and water sources, especially like in global south. We have a problem with water. In global north, they are discouraging water. It's a lot of water, especially in Europe, mainland Europe. But in global south, we have a problem with water. So if you destroy the little that we have, then it becomes really a big challenge.
Yeah, exactly. And again, there I would expect some serious cases, law cases to happen, if the legal framework is there. Because why should people in the global south accept that their river is being poisoned by a Western fashion company? I mean, if I was living there, I would slam my fist on the table and would say enough is enough. You can pay for the cure up now, But we've got to take matters into our hands, and it's urgent, no more waiting and no more being sweet here. We have to change the status quo.
Hence the need for education, especially here on local communities, because you have to have a team, you have to educate people, you have to make them learn, and then they're able to take such initiatives. So actually, that's the main challenge.
And you rightly say, same here in the global north. We also have to learn. We have to learn about how. We have to learn how to be sustainable again. We have lost that practice in the global south. You have that still, which is a big strength, I would say. You should come and educate us on this, and law is a very powerful tool that we have used very successfully in certainly in Europe and in America. It actually, environmental law came out of the civil rights movement in the US, and was there to protect the public interest. And so we have a public interest in clean air and clean water. Hopefully we will soon have a crime in international law that is called ecocide. And hopefully we will be able to protect public interest, that is people's interests, much better going forward. I think if we do that, then and if, for example, we have ecocide as a crime in international law, then we can really make progress, because that would reframe everything.
Yeah, absolutely. So, Natasha is having some issues. So therefore, I'll move ahead on the role of label. Yeah, because that one was cut off by connection issues. Yeah, so label being a socio-sustainable manufacturing firm. What we're doing, we are setting up manufacturing facilities deep in the communities in Kenya, and currently we have our piloting facility. We are calling them community facilities, and we empower the community to be able to produce all the raw materials that we need sustainably through regenerative agriculture, and we are insisting on that because we have people on the ground. Support staff who are able to give education, and also to be able to follow on the process, to map, because of traceability. And then we produce the garments. These garments still will be able to trace, all those who will buy. so that if you have any challenge, we are able, to amend and be able to fix that, and also they can be sent back. And also we are doing carbon sequestration, where we want to empower the community, in terms of buying back this, carbon, because also we want to, apart from cotton and ink dye, components, we are also helping them, grow trees, plant more trees. Then with this, it means they're also going to help, reducing the amount of carbon in the air. So therefore, that's the role Lebo is playing. So I see Natasha is back. So
thank you so much. Thank you for that. Thank you for holding the session. Sorry, I don't know what happened. I got kicked out. I think we should be wrapping up, but I thank you for this conversation. I think I wanted to just summarize, all the topics that we've covered with such an interesting discussion in terms of the layers that we've talked about in the fashion industry, where, the solutions, I think it's about solving the issues, not, we can rant about the problems, but what are the solutions? And I think, we've covered a lot of them, where education is a big part of it. Our legal system needs to protect workers and the environment, how the chemical industry participates, investors. But education, I think, is a big one. Working with local communities and even changing the kind of materials that we are using for fashion are one of the, three of the big solutions that we have talked about here. So I guess maybe just to wrap up the session, you could just, your parting comments, Bianca and Isaac, and then we'll wrap this up and then be able to share it later on with our bigger, wider audience.
I think this environmental, catastrophe that we've got on our hands now really requires all our efforts. It requires all of us to step in and do whatever we can do within the workspace we're working in, within the industry we're operating in, with the networks that we have, to do our best to bring about that change, to help transform to a sustainable system. And that includes also a sustainable fashion system. So whether we are consumers or citizens or work in a corporation or work in government, we the people can make the change, and we should really not we can't let that opportunity go to waste. This is absolutely vital. And I want to congratulate Isaac on being a founder of a new business. I think this should be the new founder era. So it's a time to now really bring about bring in your entrepreneurial ideas and make them happen. Do take the risk, it's well worth it. I co-founded an organization called She Changes Climate with 2 others to bring women into leadership, because we want to hear from them. We need their vision and their expertise in leadership now very urgently. And let's make sure nobody sits around idle, but that everyone is involved in this great effort. Hope to see you there.
Great. Thank you, Bianca.
Yeah,
I really appreciate it. Isaac, closing comments.
Yeah, so absolutely. Also on my side, I would like to call upon everyone to be able to join in this journey to sustainability. Even it doesn't have to be fashion. We have a future, and this future should be respected. Just we found, our forefathers have been protected, all the environment, especially here on the global south, and also, of course, everyone should be involved. Therefore, why should we leave it worse than we found it? I think we are supposed to make it better than we found it. Also, I also call upon, our audience, you can follow our journey. It's a label on what we are doing. For us, it's a whole, human-centered, setup, where we are not just there being a social enterprise. We are not there just for, profits. Actually, 50% of labor is going to be owned by the community, by fashion brands, or those who believe in this idea. So therefore, it doesn't have to necessarily be labeled, but everyone is encouraged to start their own initiative. And I believe it will be a success story where everyone is, that can be replicated elsewhere. Therefore, our audience, Natasha, Bianca, and the whole, team at DLF, yeah, it's a pleasure, and thank you for this opportunity.
Thank you too. Thank you both. Wish you a lovely rest of your day, and thank you to the audience for joining in. Again, this will be you can watch this as a podcast on Spotify, Apple Podcasts, Stitcher, and other platforms. And yeah, we hope maybe we can carry on this conversation at a later date and see where we are in terms of sustainability in fashion. Thank you both.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, Natasha, and thank you, Isaac.
Thank you too.
Thank you, Bianca.